We are recording. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming, everybody. Welcome to another Junior Developer Happy Hour. Sam and I started these back in the springtime because we both recognized that in general, it's hard to get your first job, like moving into tech, and especially with just everything that's going on in the world, things were getting harder. So we didn't want anyone to give up hope after putting in a lot of time and effort. And we just would love for everyone to go out there and get an awesome job as a software engineer, developer, anything in the industry, if that's what you're interested in doing. So the way that these work typically, it's AMA, ask me anything, ask us anything. And the best place to post the questions, as has been linked in the chat, is this Slido right here. I'll just post it again just in case anyone is new in the last like 30 seconds. That is the best place to post some questions because everybody can upvote the questions and we can just make sure that we are getting to the questions that the most people are interested in hearing. If there are follow-up questions to what we're talking about, or if there are resources that we're talking about, we try to get those into the Zoom chat right in here. So if you are able to or want to hang around until the very end, that is when we invite everybody to come off of mute and we can have more of a conversation style and just actually get to know some people here and do some kind of like networking, I guess. But that, I think, is about it for the meetup. I can also just give a quick little intro about me. I'm Brady. I'm a software engineer. I work at Nordstrom Trunk Club. I went to a coding bootcamp back in 2017. I didn't really know what I wanted to do like when I grew up, but I really enjoyed learning spoken languages. So I majored in Spanish, minored in Italian. I moved to a German-speaking country, learned German there, and still just never knew what I was going to do. And then moved back home for a combination of a bunch of reasons, even though I was sad to move back home. And ended up discovering that computer languages were a lot like learning spoken languages. So that is what led me to get into the bootcamp. But now I am a full stack engineer. I focus mostly on front end stuff. So React front end, lots of JavaScript, TypeScript, and then our back end is Ruby for now. I got hired on at Trunk Club, but then we got fully absorbed by Nordstrom. So there's going to be a lot of change in the next like year or so. And yeah, my team focuses on onboarding new customers onto the Trunks feature. So if somebody is signing up for a box of clothes to get sent to their house from a personal stylist, my team helps with that whole onboarding process to get that process started. That's enough about me, and I will hand it over to Sam.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Sam, currently front-end engineer at Lyft in the mapping organization. I just put in 2 weeks notice yesterday, though, so I won't be at Lyft next month. I'm taking a 1-year sabbatical. Well, that's the plan. We'll see. If I get bored, maybe I'll start working for a company again, full-time. But that's what I'm doing. I just started mentoring with SidePrjct. You'll find out about what that is because that's where our guests today are from. And yeah, I do mostly front end. I've been doing mostly front end for most of my career. I started doing web development professionally 2013, so 7 years now. I also went to Dev Bootcamp in 2013. One of the earlier cohorts. I also have a computer science degree though, which is different than a lot of bootcamp students. I got a computer science degree a long time ago. I graduated during the dot-com bust. I never ended up getting a job. I gave up too quickly. So yeah, like Brady said, we started this because I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. I gave up within like 6 months. That's like you should not do that. Probably the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. Um, so I ended up working in the mortgage industry for years. That industry blew up in 2008 for people who were um, paying attention to what was going on in the economy back then. And I joined the Peace Corps, hoping that things would be better when I got back. So I went to West Africa for 3 years. I lived in Togo for 2 years and Burkina Faso for a year. It's totally different place. It's like going to live on Mars. It was a really good experience. It's really hard though to live in like a third world country, and they're French speaking country. So I had to learn how to speak French, and I was terrible at it. Um, but anyways, I found out somehow about Dev Bootcamp when I was there, sitting in the middle of the sub-Saharan desert in Burkina Faso. Um, that's a long story, but um, if we ever chat one-on-one, I can tell you about it. Any Peace Corps volunteer has a million stories they can tell you. It's a crazy adventure being a Peace Corps volunteer. But yeah, that's a quick intro of my journey. I took a long journey to get to Lyft. It was a long, windy path. There's definitely not a straight path to get to where I am at Lyft. But yeah, so let's go on to Polina. Maybe you can start and like let us know what Side Project all about, and also give us intro about your background and stuff like that.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me and for inviting us to be in this meetup. I think it's super exciting. I love introductions of both of you. So I'm going to give you also an introduction of me a little bit longer than I usually will do because I feel at home, we're kind of chatting. So I'm originally from Ukraine. When I was 20 years old, I moved to Germany. Also didn't really like had proficient language skills in German, but I continued studying there business administration. And when I was in my last year in my master's program, I got introduced to a startup accelerator program by one big corporate company. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to try and see what startups are all about. Before that, I never heard of it. So I started kind of like working, interning for this accelerator program. And I was introduced to many startups simultaneously. And I fell in love with startup culture. And I think this was kind of like the most important experiences in my life, because from one perspective in this accelerator program, I was confronted with the big corporate world, and from another perspective with startups, and it kind of like made it click for me. And back then it was almost 15 years ago. I was like, okay, I really thrive when working with startups, and it has never changed since then. So I was working then I got a job out of college and worked as a product manager for small e-commerce company. But it was barely a year when I had this urge to start something on my own. I went to something like a hackathon. It's called Startup Weekend. I don't know, maybe some of you are aware of it. It is also a 3-day event, and basically engineers, I don't know, marketers, designers all come together. We hack something together in 3 days, and that's it usually. And I actually read some stats that 95% of teams dissolve after hackathons and never kind of like move on with the ideas. It was very different for me. So basically, we have pitched at this event, and my team has won, and it kind of like blew my mind. And next day, it was Monday, and I decided, okay, I'm just gonna quit my job. So I just went there and was telling my boss that, okay, just I went to the 3-day event and I cannot imagine working for you anymore. So, and this is what happened. So normally they told me I have to continue working for 3 months, but basically every second week I was coming back to him and begging him to let me go because I just cannot do it anymore. And he was like totally a great person, and at some point he also wanted to work with me for my startup, but it kind of like never turned this way. Anyway, I was with my startup. It is kind of like was in a food tech space. Um, Basically a nice little mobile app to help people cook better and be more healthy. So I was with this startup for almost 4 years, and was juggling my life between Berlin and San Francisco. And definitely what I can say, it was great. I would suggest everyone to kind of try building startup. And at the same time, it was like a huge burnout for me as well. So it was kind of like a big downside. And kind of like in the end of my journey with the startup, I decided, okay, I have either to value my family or to keep going with my startup. There was also kind of like lots of bureaucracy around. I had either to go to the US because my husband was already here, or to stay in Germany and be like separated from my husband. And my husband back then was actually retraining himself too. So he was structural engineer and he was doing his boot camp to become a software engineer. So he was already in the US. I was stuck in Germany. And at some point I decided, okay, so it's probably the time to go. And then bureaucracy came in and then I didn't have any choice. So basically I had to leave. So I left the startup. Startup is still operating since 4 years now. So they're a pretty old company now, like 8 years old. But I'm out. And when I came to the US, I was like, okay, so I want to learn new skills because I want to be more proficient, I don't know, product manager, more helpful to my team at some point, also better founder and so on. And it led me to doing a bootcamp, a software development bootcamp myself. So, but by the end of the bootcamp, I kind of felt that I will probably be more of help to this world, not as an engineer, but more as a founder or more as a product manager. So once again, so I see many engineers who have been in this path for quite some years, at some point discover product management path. So it's also like a viable way to go for any engineer if you are like more striving in kind of like managing teams and like aligning people and so on and so forth. So if you want to talk to me about this, I'm happy after the meetup. Anyway, so I did the boot camp, then I got a job as a product manager in San Francisco. And last October, I quit my job because I felt it is again time for me to move on and like do new things. And again, life happens and I had to do this. I had to leave my startup because we were moving also from San Francisco to Oregon. And this is when basically what Sam is describing as a sabbatical year, this was probably the year for me. Lots of discoveries, lots of projects that I started with different teams. It was all like super exciting and energizing. And once I already had 2 projects, SidePrjct came into my life as a side project. So basically, I didn't plan for it, but circumstances basically aligned the way that I couldn't say no. Because basically my network of aspiring product managers, aspiring designers, and aspiring engineers was growing. And people started reaching out to me basically with a question like, how can I do side project myself? Because I believe that I have learned already a lot. I'm kind of like in the process of preparing for my interview, but something is missing. So I'm not getting interviews. I'm not getting noticed. I cannot stand out in the market. Like this chicken and egg problem, like no experience, no job, no job, no experience. It's all real. So like, how can I like, what can I do? And I was always suggesting people just like do it by yourself. So it's not a big deal. Do not overthink. But at some point it kind of struck me that it is very difficult to do it by yourself because especially if you have never done it before. And also because you are asked to do kind of like all the functions of normally a team. So if you're a product manager, you have to think for like everyone. As a designer, you have to be also a little bit of a product manager. And as an engineer, you're required kind of like to come up with a great idea and then build it. So it's like just a little bit too much for one person to handle. That's why I started a community in May this year, named it SidePrjct. And with one goal, just bring people together who are in the process of transitioning into a new career, product managers, engineers, designers, marketers, anyone who just wants to team up and build better and more solid projects and also have fun throughout the process. So this is how it all started. Again, very similar to Braidy and Sam, you have discovered kind of your own problem, wanted to help others. Same to me, started with 200 people, now we're almost 2,000 people. And people started building projects actually, which totally blew my mind. It was like exactly what I wanted them to do and they did it. But a couple of weeks in, again, people started reaching out back to me asking for mentorship because there are people who are a little bit more certain about their skills. And there are people who are less certain and kind of like struggling a little bit more to go over this hurdle of imposter syndrome, even with a side project. And for these people, kind of like to help them, kind of like elevate them and also train them better, I decided to start accelerator program. So we're now in our second cohort, and basically the idea is we are bringing people like cross-functional people, like once again, designers, engineers, and product managers together into one team. It is 12-week experience, and people have mentors throughout this process. They have PM mentors, design mentors, and engineering mentors to help them go through this process. So you can say it is either a 12-week hackathon, kind of like where you're going to have like a more solid project afterwards, and you're going to have this chance to work with a cross-functional team, because this is exactly what employers are also looking for, you know. So you have this experience, also soft skills to handle teamwork. And from another perspective, it could be like, so it is either 12-week hackathon or a small startup, you know. So it's like up to you how you define it. But the point is that you're gonna learn working with other people. You're gonna train and become better in your own craft, and you're gonna have support from mentors. So you're gonna build up your confidence also over the time. So this is basically what it's all about. And I'm super honored to be here because I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I was onboarding Braidy and Sam to become mentors at SidePrjct. And now you kind of onboarded me to this community through this meetup. So I'm grateful for this too.
And we're so happy you're here. Yeah, I forgot to say in my intro, I am a mentor as well at SidePrjct. I'm so impressed with this whole concept. I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro. Maybe we can get an intro from Will now before we get to the questions.
Okay. Hi, thanks for having me, everyone. So I'm William Kwao. I was actually born here, but I grew up in Ghana, West Africa. So right next to Togo and Burkina Faso.
Oh, I love Ghana.
Yeah.
I went there.
Yeah.
That was my vacation spot. I went to Ghana
Oh,
like
for real?
six or seven times while I was there.
Awesome.
Yeah, Butsua Beach. Butsua Beach is my favorite.
Oh yeah, I'll be going there this December actually.
Oh, awesome.
Nice. I grew up in Ghana. I went to high school in Ghana, and like one thing that one question I always had for like my teachers is like, how do you build programs, right? And like nobody ever had an answer for me. And I always used to be like, I know you don't use like Microsoft Word to build Microsoft Word. There has to be like a point where this thing gets built. So I came to America for college because my mom was living here, and I was like, I'm gonna study computer science because it claims to answer this question, right? I learned about coding, but throughout college, after like my first career fair, I was like, I need to find a way to stand out, right? Because you go to career fairs and everyone's like, I took all these courses, and I even felt bad for the people on the other side of the booth because I'm like, you're hearing the same story every time. So I was like, the best way to stand out is side projects, right? So I started learning how to build. I knew Java. I learned Java at the time, so I started learning how to build like Android apps. Went to a bunch of hackathons, and I mean, from that time, I've never been. I'm not like a 4.0 student, right? So like that was my claim to fame, and I was like, any opportunity I got after that was just based on side projects I've worked on. So I worked on like, it was a simple app to link makeup artists to customers, and I used that to get into like a student accelerator program. And some of those skills led me to get an internship at Walmart. And then, funny enough, when I got to Walmart, they were building, my project as an intern was to build an Android app, and because I had done side projects in Android, I already like knew how to do it, so like killed it, got a full-time offer. And so I was working on Walmart full-time for like almost 3 years. Got tired of it, but through that I was doing like mostly backend, even though I was a full stack developer. So, you know, Java, Spring Boot, and some Angular. But I was doing a lot of side projects in React and GraphQL. So I started applying for jobs. The two companies I was targeting was actually, I think, Apollo and Facebook. But I got to my final interview at Apollo, and Corona happened, so they canceled the interview. And I mean, I went through the Facebook interview and I got an offer. So that's how I ended up at Facebook. But the interesting part is like most of the skills that got me to Facebook was all through side projects, because like my current role at Facebook has nothing, there's no relation between that and what I did at Walmart, right? Like, you know, heavy Java backend, some Angular, and I'm doing mostly Hack and GraphQL and React. So like, I think the constant thing in progressing my career so far has been side projects. And also, I mean, I think I blogged about this experience, and that's how I met Polina, and she introduced me to the side project community, which I thought was awesome. Like, I was like, this is great. So I also joined as a mentor, and I'm currently mentoring in one of the cohorts. So yeah, that's my story.
You're actually mentoring both cohorts. So
Yeah, true.
this is actually totally a funny story how we met with Will, because I think he posted something on LinkedIn, and I think one of his descriptions was side project junkie. And I'm like, yes, this is my person. So this is how I reached out to him.
The power of the social network. That's essentially how this meetup started too, for anyone who doesn't know that background information.
Yeah.
Sam and I have never met in person.
That's how I met
Wow.
Polina too. I met Polina on LinkedIn too.
Crazy stuff. Cool. Well, we can go ahead and get started on the questions. I see a few rolling in here. So first question here is, what concepts and ideas could we work into a project to demonstrate technical aptitude? And they're offering suggestions like debounce or lazy loading.
I think this one goes to Will.
So it really depends on what you want to demonstrate, right? I guess if you're going for a front end role, the stuff you mentioned could help. But what I've noticed is most of the time, when you're presenting a side project to like get a job, they're looking at like um, they're just looking for reasons behind the decisions you made, right? So it's like maybe why did you choose this database, or why you lazy loading in. I think it's more of like if you're able to defend your decisions or give reasonable I think ideas to back why you made those decisions than what you actually picked. So I'll say just like focus on the basics, I guess, because like I remember I had to present a project, like, you know, one of these interviews where they give you a project to do. And like in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm not going to use any external libraries. I just focus on using fetch and everything. And they also found that impressive, right? So I guess just it's what you want to demonstrate to them at the time. I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers your question. But...
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like when I'm building, if I was working on a side project, I wouldn't think about what specific things I want to demonstrate to an employer. I would just think of something that's fun that I want to build that would help
Yeah.
me or other people. And then you just need to figure out what technology you need to use to build that thing. So you think of it that way. And then,
Yeah.
because the employer, I don't think they're going to look, I agree. I don't think they're going to look at it and be like, oh, you use Debounce. They're more going to be like, well said, they're going to be like, why did you do this? Like, you did it this way. There's a million ways to do it. Why did you choose to do it this way? So yeah.
Yep. All right. So as a software engineer, currently unemployed with 2 years of experience, what kind of project or activities would you recommend that this person focus on to get interviews and stand out?
So I think one thing is, I mean, if you're not already working on side projects, I think that's a good thing to do. But one thing I think helps the most is putting yourself out there, kind of documenting your journey. Because I don't know if this is proving it right, but I always say like recruiters can smell blood, right? Like anytime I put out more content, that's when I get more like, I guess, action from recruiters. It's like you put out a blog documenting like something you're building or what you're learning, and people reach out to you more that way. And I know it's a little bit more difficult that way, but it works a lot for like a lot of people I know, because like it's not I guess it's not a direct action, right? It's not like you reaching out directly to the recruiter. It's just you putting yourself out there and things coming to you. So I mean, I think that's one thing I recommend, aside from like working on side projects.
Yeah, and I can just add, I think it's totally in line with Will said. Don't be just a job seeker, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not an excuse not to build something at the same time, because I mean, once again, so I think this is the same. I have always kind of comparison to startups. So startups were struggling to fundraise. If they're just fundraising, investors can sense it, that they're like really in need, you know, and they'll be not running behind the startups. This is exactly the same with job seekers. So you have to show that you're well off even without their offer. Then this is when they started to be excited and interested in you, right? So for example, I'm not looking for a job now. I'm busy, you know, and really talking about myself. So, and just people reach out to me, like ask, like, do you want to start, like, join this company? Do you want to join this company? Just because they sense that I'm not desperate for this job, you know. So just don't be desperate to get the job. Really get yourself busy and like do meaningful stuff, you know, like to learn, to level up, to increase your network, basically what you're doing now. I think this is a great thing to do also, like try to connect to people and try to listen to real stories, basically how people approach different things. So I think it always helps.
Yeah, human psychology is weird. They always want what they can't have. So for some reason, if you're desperately looking for a job, it turns them off and they don't reach out to you. I don't know why humans are like that. It's
just cruel life. Yeah.
Same thing with dating, right? Like as soon as you start dating somebody, then
Oh man. Yeah, and it might not be an immediate change, right? I know that I had also over summer was really good about posting a lot of content really regularly, and it took a couple of weeks, but yeah, people started reaching out to me, not just recruiters, but contacts that I had from my past of, oh yeah, I'm working at this company and we're hiring and I see you all the time. But eventually,
you have to be patient, because if you just keep showing up in their social media feeds, or you just keep participating in some community like ours or side project, you stay on the top of the mind of people, and then when opportunity arises, you're like the first person they think of, because they see you working on stuff every day. They like know what you're working on. They kind of know what you like, what you're interested in. People just get to know you like over time. So even though if they never met you in person, they could just see you posting all the time on the internet. And they kind of know, they get to know your interests. And then when opportunity comes, even if it's not at their company, it could be something they saw on their social media feed, and they'd be like, oh, this looks like this would be good for this person. And they forward it to you. So you just need to be patient and consistent, just like constantly like participating in the community, building stuff and posting stuff on social media.
And I want
blogging, like Will said. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just learned something also from one of the basically participants from 1 PM from the side project. She recently posted that her like hiring manager was even impressed to hear that she was in progress of working on a side project. So that's why this is kind of like a little bit of a mistake also to think that, hey, you're only ready to share about it once you're ready to ship, you know. So it's not true. It's just like people, I mean, unfortunately not too many people like work on side projects, which is like weird to me, but this is the fact. So the fact that you are like putting this extra effort, it's totally worth sharing, even like your whole process, you know.
Yeah, didn't she say she got hired because of that? Or that probably
yeah, she got hired because of that, because she impressed the hiring manager that she was working on this type of thing that she was working on, that she's still working on. So
amazing. Okay, so next question here. I have graduated from a boot camp and have a capstone project already, so I don't quite understand how your program is beneficial for someone like me.
Okay, I think this is a good question. Well, first of all, I think the main audience for our program is exactly people who have graduated from boot camps or who are recent college graduates. So basically somebody who might have a couple of projects, but not enough to impress someone. So the thing is, again, I see it all the time. Doesn't matter like what kind of tech career you're trying to get into, either engineer or product manager or designer. There are definitely downsides if you're working on a project like just by yourself. So once again, if you're an engineer, you're supposed also to be a designer actually for your project, and the project looks accordingly. I'm not saying that all projects are looking terrible, But like, I think you know what I mean. I think some of the mentors also told me it's like designed by engineer. There is a term like this. So this is one
That's
thing. And yeah, this is one thing. So it's just, you know, once again, what just Sam said, people are just weird creatures. Although hiring managers do not have to expect from you to be great designers, but still their eyes will stick with the projects that also look accordingly. So this is one thing. Another thing, this is also not to generalize or make your capstone projects bad, but most of the capstone projects, what I saw was something around like recipe app or to-do app or something like, you know, like rather minimalistic, but something that you will see over and over again. So this is something also you cannot really impress somebody with. So what we are trying to do is, we're actually, by the fact that you're not working alone, you're also working with product managers and designers, and they're also intrinsically motivated to deliver a cool project. They're really working there like really hard to figure out like, are you solving the right problem? Then they're trying to prototype it the right way. Gonna get like lots of user research before you start building this all. So in the end of the day, you will get a much nicer project. I would say it will be looking much nicer, will feel more solid, and throughout the process you will learn kind of the skills that you usually do not learn in the bootcamp, because you will work directly with product managers and designers, and it's like huge value for the future, you know, not even to get the job, but like to be successful at your job as an engineer at some point, you know. And throughout this process you'll be supported also through mentors like Sam, Will, or Braidy. So it is kind of like absolutely different experience. And one thing, I'm not kind of accepting people who are not having any experience, any kind of like theory down, any kind of stuff that they have already started building, you know, because then the learning curve will be so much bigger, and it will take probably like 6 months to get from start to delivering your project. So that's why we have a very specific focus on actually helping you deliver your first meaningful project. Learn throughout the process, learn from your peers, because you'll be also working like in a cohort, so other people are also working on other projects, so you can learn how they approach things. And you will also learn from mentors who are more experienced than you, who will kind of direct you and guide you in terms of what makes sense to do, what doesn't make sense to do, and all this stuff. So
yeah, I also think it's more like building a startup. It's not like when you go to the boot camp, your capstone, you spend like a week on it. At least at the boot camp, we had like 4 days to build our final project. You can build a much better product in 12 weeks, um, especially when you're working with like PMs and designers and mentors. It's gonna be like 100 times better probably than your um, capstone project. Like it be like more like a real app. I think a lot. Uh, I think out of the side project, there's probably going to be like apps that actually like get traction, that people are going to be like real users are going to be using it. So imagine if you get 100 people to use your app. That's going to be super impressive to hiring managers. It's hard to get 100 people to use whatever app you're building. So if you could do that and you put that like even on your resume, that would pop out, I think, to people, at least in my opinion. And also, you don't have to do the accelerator program with SidePrjct as well. I signed up before I was a mentor. Just on the bottom of the page on SidePrjct, you can just sign up to get access to the Slack and just be a part of the community. And Polina sends out really awesome weekly digest emails with like job opportunities and to highlight some of the awesome projects people are working on. Yeah, it's really well done. I was surprised when I got the first one.
oh, thank you. Yeah, so normally this is like during the night that I'm hacking this all together. Yeah, but definitely, yeah, you're welcome to join just the community. We have lots of people just really willing to build something, you know, many ideas, many projects that have already started. So you can join on the projects which are already active, or suggest your own project, you know. But the point is like, you don't have to build it by yourself, like all alone, you know, because I think like one side effect of the side project when you're building it as a team is, you know, like this whole job searching process is like very draining. So, you know, like you know, like you have probably like more downs than ups. And that's why, like, when you're building something with a team and you're like excited about the project just by itself, then it also kind of like helps to lift you up. You know, this is like what I heard also from the teams, that they're excited about what they're doing, like, do they see like the bigger meaning and all this stuff. So that's not to
And
discount this.
one of the things that I think is so interesting, all of the projects that I've heard about from this cohort are really meaningful. They're hoping to find solutions to really meaningful big problems that exist in the world. So that, I think, having some like really big issue and knowing that you're doing something for the greater good, I can't say that I know it would help everybody, but it would help motivate me, I know.
Yeah. There's like one on imposter syndrome. What else is there, Polina?
Yeah, there is a team who is working on the solution to fight cyberbullying in gaming. Then there is one on imposter syndrome. Then there is a different one to help people educate basically in financial literacy. Another one on food waste. And the last one is helping teachers kind of to adapt to this new online education life, because it's also very difficult for them.
Great. Okay. That was a great question. I'm glad it got asked. So this one is, are there fees to join SidePrjct?
Yeah, there are fees because I have to kind of like make it sustainable too. Although I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible, and I'm also offering scholarships for people who really need it. At the same time, so once again, so the structure is, it is 12 weeks, but the first 4 weeks is only product managers and designers work together, and the last 8 weeks is a dev track where you all work together. So for the 8 weeks program, it is $4.99 for the third cohort. So it is definitely not another bootcamp that you have to pay for, and yeah.
But you can also, if you can afford that too, there is that scholarship, like she said, and also you can just join the community, and there's people looking for people to just build stuff, but
Yeah,
you don't get the mentorship and structure from the accelerator program. That's the only difference.
yeah, but you can definitely build. So I really like, this is kind of like my personal goal, that more people get into this practical experience of building something, because it is a great experience, and you as engineers, you are so equipped to do this. So just sometimes you need a little bit of more boost, and sometimes you just need team members. So definitely you're welcome to join the community as well.
I unmuted myself when I wanted. Never mind. All right. How many side projects would be appropriate to have in your portfolio? I guess this is maybe saying, like, I read this and I hear an assumption that, do you have to have a certain number of projects in your portfolio before you can start applying places?
Will, do you have any number in your mind?
No, I don't have any number in mind. I mean, I think first of all, you can get a job without a side project, right? So like that's one thing. A side project is to help you stand out. So I think it's more about the meaningfulness of a side project. If you have like 10 similar to like to-do list applications, I don't think they'll be as impressed as if you have like one application that actually demonstrates skill and like some form of creativity, right? For like example, like I've done a bunch of side projects in the past, but the one I put on my resume in my recent job search was my recent one, fedup.co, right? And it's interesting to see that I'll tell them I worked on this side project, fedup.co, and they're like, oh, that's impressive, right? Then when I'm like, I have 100 chefs using the platform, they're like, their mind is blown. So like their levels to it, right? It's like a side project is cool, but a side project with users is also like really cool, right? So I don't think target a number, just do something that is meaningful.
Yeah, and as I said, once again, so do not wait until you have shipped all of these projects.
Yeah.
Just share the progress
The
of it,
progress,
and
yeah.
it will be just good enough, And you will see how basically your potential hiring managers react to you, so you'll probably see progress there as well, but just do not wait until the last minute and then you see, okay, now I'm perfectly ready, because you will never be like perfectly ready.
Yeah, I think if you run into the problem where you have too many side projects, wow, what an unfortunate problem to have, really. I think you can always pick and choose from those.
Yeah. So it's funny, I saw someone on LinkedIn this week who was like, he's now on his 200th side project. I was like, gosh, like that is crazy.
Wow. Okay, so can you share the advantages and disadvantages of applying to internships and apprenticeship roles versus junior or entry-level roles?
Does anyone want to take this? So I could go first.
Yeah, you've done internship, that's why. So
Okay.
I've never done an internship.
I mean, it really depends, right? I'd say still go for all if you can, because I mean, there's nothing stopping you from applying to an internship at a junior role, right? And see what sticks. I mean, I guess if you're still a student, usually internships are more appropriate. But I mean, of course, if you could get a junior role, you should still go for it because it's gonna advance you in your career faster, right? Like, I don't have like a specific example for this, but like I have a friend who was like I guess like a junior developer, and she applied for a role at Netflix, right? If you know anything about Netflix, they don't employ people with like few years of experience, right? It's usually like 5+ or like very senior engineers. There are no junior engineers, and she got the role with like less than 3 years of experience, right? And I mean, one thing that's taught me is like just put yourself out there and apply for things. You never know what is. Don't like undersell yourself. So if you have the opportunity to apply for all of them, just do all of them and see. You might surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one, what are your tips on getting over interview anxiety? I get really bad anxiety on interviews.
I wish I had a good answer for that.
Yeah. I don't have answer either. I still 7 years later get really nervous in interviews.
Yeah, I think it's good to think like most people get nervous. I mean, so like, I guess what's it the saying? Misery loves company. I guess so. I'm like, I find some calm knowing in the fact that like almost everyone gets nervous during interviews. But also one thing I really like to think about is like instead of an interview in my mind, I try to convince myself that this is a conversation with a coworker. And whenever I'm able to do that successfully, like I always see I kill the interview because like it becomes more of a conversation than an interview. So it's like I remember like I still remember my system design interview from Facebook because I feel like that was like my peak conversation. I felt like I was talking to somebody I knew, and it just feels good, right? Now, I mean, I guess if you don't think about it that way, you just get really nervous and very critical of yourself, and that can affect your performance. So I don't know how you get in that space, but however you can, just go for it.
Yeah. It's always like easier said than done, and you can do research and try to have some game plans. I think the best thing is to have a couple of strategies at your disposal because like even once you have those strategies, there are some things can help a little bit, but you still kind of need some practice using those strategies. So like the first interview that you go through, once you know of a few tips, are going to be they're still going to feel bad.
Yeah, true.
I like to, a lot like what you were saying, just try to frame it in a way that makes you feel a little bit better. Like recognizing that the people that are interviewing you are not like trying to trick you. and be like, you don't know anything. They're like, they want you to do well. They want you to be hired, especially if you're like being a personable person, which can also just be really hard because people start to kind of shut down a little bit when they feel really stressed out. So yeah, remembering that they want you to do well, and then also remembering that like this is trying to find something that's good for both parties. So like if you are unfortunately experiencing a really like toxic interviewer, you might be like, it might not be a great situation near term, but that might be a really good red flag for you to like run away because I have so gratefully only had a really good experience with my coworkers. And I also can recognize that there were some people that were not easy to work with at my boot camp. And if I had to choose like the short boot camp experience of people that are not easy to work with versus 3 years at a job, I 100% am grateful that this is the scenario I'm in. And I also like to have people try to think about what they're going to do after their interview. You have like people who are new getting into this role, I think are probably statistically, you're going to go through a lot of interviews. And so if the first interview you go through, you bomb, it's kind of likely that that's going to happen. But your reaction to that is going to be, it'll be able to put you on a different trajectory, I think. So like, don't expect to just hang around and like mull things over in your head. Like try to be busy, try to have some activity afterwards planned out where you can't really think about, I totally messed that up. Like try to be focused on something else, however you can. If that means like going for a run, or if you can, like right now it's not really easy to meet up with different friends, but if you can distract yourself with like a conversation with other people, that sort of stuff is really helpful.
Yeah, and I also wanted to, so I didn't have so much experience with interviewing because I was lucky, I think, in my life. I was always kind of like through different projects, I was offered at some point some opportunities, but I did have lots of experience of getting a no from investors, and it's like so similar because you're trying to do your best, you know, like you're believing in yourself, like even you're believing in yourself like so much, you believe how great your product or how great you are, and then you're getting a no, and not just one no, but like no after no after no. At some point I realized it's just like it is normal to get no. So you have like in your head, you know, think about it more of like a learning experience. So for me, I decided that I will treat it as a learning experience, and I'm already mostly prepared to get a no. But you know, like you learn more from failures than from successes. So that's why if you are getting a no, try to document like what went good, what didn't go so good during the interview. So you are basically carrying this knowledge to the next interview and gradually improving, you know. So this is one thing. So just like normalize it for yourself. No is a part of life, you know, and it's no different at your interviews. So the second thing is don't forget that not only you are being interviewed, that you're also interviewing your potential employer. Just what Brady said. If it is already like toxic environment during the interview, it's like it is not about you, you know. It's about this employer. It's about people in this company who are not treating you well, you know. So it's also kind of like a real experience from life. I was just talking to one of the persons, like one of the people from the community, and she was like, well, you know, I was asked a question and I was answering the question, and in the moment when I was like totally in the flow, the interviewer just stand up and said like, oh, wait a second, I have to open the door, or I have to do something like pick my dog or something like that. And she said like, I was so distracted and I felt immediately that I did something wrong, that I didn't deliver and all this stuff. But after she was like realizing, kind of like reflecting on that interview, she realized like she did nothing wrong. So it was not on her. It was just the person who didn't deal with her like with enough respect. And sometimes you cannot change that, you know, but what you can change is like do not get stressed about this specific company. Just like forget about it and treat it as a blessing that it was a sign from somewhere higher that it's like it's not your place to work. There are so many companies out there. There are so many jobs. At some point, they will be yours, and it will not only be yours from the kind of like qualification standpoint, but also from the kind of like human standpoint. And I think this is kind of like the important thing. Do not to forget, during this all stress job hunting.
And there's one thing I kind of forgot that I kind of want to add is like do a lot of practice, because it's kind of like giving a speech, right? So a lot of practice interviews. I mean, there's one thing I did. I still don't know if it's good or bad. It's probably bad, but what I did was I ranked a lot of companies in order of like how bad I kind of want to work there, and I started from the bottom, and like that was like my practice interviews, right? So it's like I went through those with more confidence because like I really didn't mind if I got the job or not. And it's funny because I saw my interviewing skills also like really increasing over time, right? Like, and by the time I got to the end of the list, it was all like my interview performance was pretty good. And it's funny, like my first interview, I bombed it so hard, it was funny. Like, I tell my friends about it like it's stand-up comedy, and like it's just a great difference from like the last one. So I mean, that's one thing I recommend people try.
Yeah, I don't think that's bad. I think that's a good strategy. I don't think it's unethical either, because those companies might convince you to join the company.
Yeah, true.
So you're like giving them a chance.
Agreed. And I'm just gonna post this book that I read and enjoyed. This is just the Amazon link. If you find it somewhere else, yay. But it, especially at the beginning, it went through a bunch of different hacks. Like one of the things that I just was blown away was why yoga is so good at like calming you down. And its point was that like you have to like stand up, and then you kind of like are upside down and you stand up again, and your body thinks that your blood pressure is really high like when you're upside down, so it overcompensates and like does everything to de-stress you, and you're like tricking your body. And I thought it was really cool, but I'm a nerd, so check it out if you're
And
interested.
fun fact, at Dev Bootcamp, when I went to Dev Bootcamp, yoga was mandatory. Like yoga was part of the bootcamp curriculum.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Dev Bootcamp was a strange place. I
Yeah,
liked it a lot
you
though.
live there basically 24 hours mostly.
I was there all day. Yeah.
Okay, let me find my little questions tab again. Here we go. Okay, would you recommend joining a very early startup as your first dev job?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a decision. I mean, one thing though I've realized, because I kind of started with the same mindset, right? Even though like the first company I joined was Walmart, it was actually a startup acquired by Walmart, so it was like still like its own thing, right? And the reason why I wanted to join was that same mentality that you go to a startup, you're able to do a lot of things instead of being like siloed into one thing, right? You learn a lot of skills. But it's funny, now I'm at Facebook too. I'm realizing that it's, I mean, maybe it's a fallacy because it really depends on the company. Because like, I'm in a big company right now, right? And I feel like my day to day is still like I'm able to make a lot of decisions, touch a lot of things at once. So I don't know, I would say probably focus your decision on a team in companies if you can, right? Because you can have different experiences based on your team in a company, right? You can be in a team that does probably only support tickets, right? And that might be a bad or good experience depending on who you are. And you could be in a team that does a lot of like exploring, right? And that might also be what you like. So probably focus on more on the team than like the company if you can, because some companies you cannot determine where you want to work before you get in.
Yeah. And this is another one of those questions where it depends. Well,
Yeah.
that's the answer to a lot of questions.
Yeah, true.
It seems like to most questions in the software engineering world, the answer is
Yeah.
it depends. Maybe outside of software engineering as well. So this is the time of the week where I give you keyvalues.com. drop this link every week. It helps you figure out what companies match your values.
I love it.
This was made by a Dev Bootcamp student, and now that's all she does. She just works on this. That's her job. She actually makes good money, I think, on it.
So it was a side
But
project.
she started as a side project. She worked on it all by herself, and she worked on it in public and got into like the indie hackers community, and got a lot of feedback just from people on the internet, and now it's popular. And it got really popular because she got on the front page of Hacker News twice. So
Wow.
but yeah, it depends. My first full-time gig was at a small tiny startup. I started in the founder's living room, and they fed me tamales every day. Eventually we got an office, so I mean, it's good and bad. Like, you just get thrown in the fire, so you have to learn. Like, when you get thrown in the swimming pool and you don't know how to swim, you got to learn how to swim or you're gonna die, right? So for some people that's like too much and you'll just like freak out, but I learned a lot. It was my first time working in a full stack JavaScript stack. I learned Ruby on Rails at the bootcamp. In college I learned Java, so doing like Node.js was totally new, but I just had to learn how to do it. And eventually we hired a CTO who was super awesome, and I learned a lot from him because I had direct access. He was the person. I was building the product with just me and him, and he pair programmed with me like half of the time, and we whiteboarded all the architecture solutions together. Well, basically he was doing it, but like he did it with me all the time, not just in his head by himself. So I feel like that was my biggest growth in software engineering, the year that I worked with him. So there's like pros and cons. I got lucky, I guess, with he was an awesome CTO. But then with a big company, they might have like really good mentorship inside of the company that helps you like in a more structured way instead of just being thrown in the fire. So it just depends. Yeah, like Will said, it could depend on the team, company. It can depend on like tons of different things.
Yeah, and it should depend also on you, on your personality, you know. So
Yep.
I mean, some people are made for startups, some other people are not made for startups, but they're like thriving in kind of like more structured organizations. So in startups,
Yeah.
it's just like it's all a little bit chaotic. So if you like, you know,
It's
like being a part of the chaos, totally fine. Yeah, you should try it. But if you know already about yourself that you need a little bit more structure, and you would maybe from day one would love to have a mentor. So I mean, Sam was definitely lucky that at some point they hired CTO and he could learn from him, but it could be not the point for all the startups. So, you know, so that's why like from the beginning you have to be ready like to work by yourself and like deliver and like learn as fast as you can.
Yep. Startups definitely a roller coaster ride. So you never know when the
It
company
is.
is going to go out of business. So there's a trade-off because like you don't have stability financially wise. But in my opinion, I've worked at all different kinds of companies now. The startup was the most fun company I think that I worked at. Like you don't have to do like performance reviews when you work at like Lyft and Facebook and those kind of companies.
Yeah,
You have to do performance reviews a couple times a year, and I think
stressful.
100% of the engineers hate it.
Oh yeah,
Not only engineers.
I think
Oh,
everyone hates it.
yeah, like why do we do it? I don't find it beneficial. It's like all work stops for like days.
Yeah,
You stop doing work and you just do performance reviews on your peers.
yeah, yeah. I just did mine like this past week. I submitted it on Friday, so I feel you.
I hate
It's
it. So small startup, you don't need to do that. Well,
yeah.
at least in my experience, I don't think small startups do that.
All right. Lots of great points there. Okay, how do you keep up with data structure and algorithms or design interview questions while at SidePrjct?
Okay, can I do a short answer and maybe Will has like a more longer answer? I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, you know, in order to get a job, you need all of this, you know, so there's like, there are some fundamentals, so something like data structures and all this stuff. There is also like fundamentals JavaScript that you have basically to show that you can code. There is a side project that you can show that you can literally code something from the beginning to the end, that you can deliver something. But in order to be successful at the interview, you again need a different type of skills. So that's why, I mean, you once again, you gotta do what you gotta do. And just give you my personal example. So a little bit from a different perspective. So people ask me like, how do you handle multiple projects? Like, how is it possible? And so on and so forth. And I'm going to tell you, I also have a small child and I don't have a nanny all this time. And still I was able to build it out. It's kind of like insane focus and also kind of like reducing the stuff that you actually do not need now. And I'm talking about something like Netflix and all different subscriptions that basically rob you your time, you know. So just imagine that, like, I have done this calculation, I'm not gonna do it now in my head, but like just a couple of hours per day of Netflix or like gaming or like other stuff, which is so nice to have in our lives. But keep in mind like what you want to achieve and by when. Like, can you afford this couple of hours per day just like to hang around, like do something like not related to your job search? If you feel yes, I mean, it's your choice. But at the same time, like in order to be productive and in order to be focused, once again, you have to be focused and just reduce this noise from your life. So it is possible and to work on the side project. And actually, like during our program, it is more structured. So it's 8 weeks. People spend like around 10 hours per week. And you're working in a small team with another engineer. So this way it's possible to make progress from week to week. But even like in the less structured kind of like environment in the community where people just work on side projects, it's definitely possible to marry and side project. And some people also work full time. Some people are not working full time, but they're actively interviewing. So once again, it is possible. You just have to create kind of like your own setup for this. So once again, you don't have to be like super productive person, but like you have to have kind of like a vision. Why are we doing this? And then everything else will kind of like will bounce from you, you know, everything what you don't need, and you will only stick to the things that you really need now. It was a short one. Well, do you have a more longer
Yeah.
answer to this important question?
And I totally agree with you. Because like I remember when I started my recent job search, I was like, you know, you think because you have a job already and you have some experience, it'll be easier, right? But it still had to take an insane amount of like sacrifice and like focus for like 6 months. My social life was trash. I wasn't keeping up with most things. Just, you know, working on my side project at a time and studying for algorithms, right? So I guess what was the question again? Like, how can you do side project and data structures and algorithms? That's it, right? I mean, one thing is, I mean, of course, you got to learn data structures and algorithms on the side, right? Because like you hardly ever implement that in real life. I don't know about you, Sam or Brady.
Yeah.
Have you ever used like hardcore algorithms
No.
and data structure?
No.
No, right? Yeah, I've actually used it once and I was so excited. Like, trust me, I was running all around the office because I was working on a recommendation system for Walmart. I was working on like reverse logistics system, right? So you return something, we make a recommendation to Walmart on what to do with the item, and we're using a tree, right? And for some reason, it was supposed to be a tree that had only unique elements, and there were duplicates. So me and my senior engineer had to debug this tree, draw it on a board. And I was like, thank God I finally get to get some words out of my college education. And we walked through the tree and that was it. So you hardly ever use any data structures and algorithms. So you definitely have to study that on the side. But I think one thing side projects can help you with is system design, right? Because like, I think system design is all about backing up your decisions or making decisions based on like, I guess, credible facts or like just sensible decisions, right? And when you're building a side project, you get to ask yourself these questions, right? Like, what database am I using? What tech stack am I using? And I think that will really help you with system design. And I mean, one tip I'll give for system design is always try to drive it to what you know. Like, never say anything you don't know. So it's like, for me, if I'm at a system design interview and they're like, design an API, right? I'll try to insert I'll try to focus on the parts that I know, right? Because at the end of the day, the interviewer is trying to see what you know, mostly not what you don't know. So one mistake a lot of developers do is they might mention like, oh, I'm gonna add a Kafka queue or something, or mention one of these cool technology. I'll be like, so how are you gonna implement it? And you look like you were lying about knowing that thing, right? So I mean, just take
Yep.
what is in your toolbox and expand more on it. And you can also let the interviewer know that there are better things out there, but if this is what you have to do now, this is what you do without having to do any other research. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it did.
Yeah. I just like to add, some people might need to make a calendar to help them, like use Google Calendar. Like that's what I put a lot of stuff in my Google Calendar. Um, maybe not every single thing. Some people calendar out their whole day, like when they're job searching. Like I forget if Steven, I don't know if he's still here. He is one of our past guests, and he had like a full day. Like his job search was pretty insane. If you want to watch that YouTube, I can drop the link in a little bit. He had a whole schedule of consistent things. He had a routine of what he did every day while he was doing his job search, where he wake up, he does networking for like an hour or two, then study algorithms and apply to jobs. He applied to like 60 jobs a day or something like that.
Wow.
He was he's the only person that was like super big on the numbers game that we've had as a guest. Um, but yeah, you just got to find what works. That worked for him. So um, you can try out different strategies. Like every piece of advice we give you or a guest give you, you got to that might not work for you. It's just we're just giving you advice like based on things that work for us, and everybody's different. So you gotta kind of just uh, try something out and then see if it works for you or not. Or you can even combine strategies too. Is that the Stephen Inoue link, Brady?
Yeah, it is. And actually, that's another thing that he said. He was the first person to put it in such clear words that really, really resonated with me. Every person that you talk to, everybody that gives you advice on how to get a job in this space, or really anything in life, any advice, they are one point of data. And you are going to get a lot of different pieces of advice, and your job is going to be to try to put that like in a graph and in your mind, or maybe you're gonna graph it out actually, but see what sounds reasonable to you, see what the most people are suggesting potentially. Yeah, not everybody is going to give exactly the same advice, but you get to kind of see what you listen to most.
Yeah. And also, if you need help being more disciplined with your day, you can do things that make it harder for you to waste time. Like pause your Netflix subscription or whatever subscriptions you have. Like I think James Clear talks about this a lot in the Atomic Habits. When you're trying to build good habits, you make it as easy as possible to do those things to build those habits. And then when you're trying to break bad habits, you make it hard to do those things. Like if you eat chocolate all the time because you have chocolate on your counter, just hide it, put it somewhere. If there's always chocolate in your house, if you live with other people and they eat chocolate, just ask them if you can like hide it in the cabinet, or put it, if you're short or something, put it in the cabinet like super high so that it makes it harder for you to get it. Like you can't just put your hand and grab it. You have to like get a chair to like up and go get it. So also highly recommend they read that book. I think it's on y'all's list of recommended reading, Atomic Habits.
I
Good one to read.
finally listened to the actual audiobook, so I can now say I've read it.
Awesome.
I have another recommendation for you guys, because if you liked Atomic Habits, you will definitely like Tiny Habits. So this is actually by a Stanford professor. His name is BJ Fogg. I'm a big fan of him. And he finally brought up the book, but the book is basically, I mean, he was sharing all his advice already before, but this is great. So one thing that I can share also is basically his advice to tackling habits is you have already many habits in your life. So in order to add more habits, which you actually want to have, a great way to do it is try to infuse them exactly after your natural habits. So not before, but after. So for example, if you wake up and your habit is to drink a cup of water, think about what would be the next habits that could like immediately follow this one. And you just like do it for several weeks and you will figure out that it's actually working. So I'm in the process of doing it too, because I wanted to get more into yoga. So, and I realized for myself that drinking water is definitely already kind of existing habits of me. And afterwards I can do 5 minutes of yoga, and 5 minutes is definitely better than 0. So try it out too.
Yep. I started making a habit a couple months ago doing push-ups every morning to wake up. And it's like I feel a lot better. And I have a hard time waking up in the morning. And that helps me wake up. I like wake right up after I do I'm like wide awake after I do the push-ups. And I made it a habit to do it as soon as I roll out of bed. So that doesn't have to do anything with that tiny habits, but that popped into my head of a new habit that I developed. And
yeah, but this is the system.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot stronger too. So like I can feel it, and the push-ups are getting easier. And I'm doing more. I'm slowly going up.
I think it's probably the same with data structures, isn't it?
Yeah,
true.
Yeah.
And anything you do, you keep doing it, you get better. Like exercising, you get stronger. Data structures is you're exercising your mind, right? So same thing.
Yeah.
And with
do
that,
any of you? No, go ahead.
Oh, with data structures, if they're really frustrating for you, yeah, that's a perfect segue into like try to find really, really, really easy ones, because I think a lot of people try to push themselves a little bit farther before they're ready, and so like find really, really easy ones and then slowly work your way up from there.
Yeah, I think if you want to do that, I'd recommend Eat a Bit to like start if data structures and algorithms are really hard, because that's like the easy level. If you try to start on leak code, easy level leak code is hard. Like when you're just starting out, Eat a Bit, well, like it's like baby steps. It starts like at the more like building blocks to like help you build up your skills to get ready rather than jumping straight into like leak code. Yeah, somebody Brady just posted the link, and Josue has been doing like walkthroughs of Eat a Bit questions. I think he dropped out, but he was here earlier. Yeah, he started like a YouTube where he's like walking through how to do the Eat a Bit challenges, which is also good because he's learning it himself and providing value to other people who are learning how to code. So that's like super awesome.
Perfect. Okay, so here's a question. As someone who is in the process of actively looking for a job, how much time would you suggest I dedicate it to side project? So it's a really similar question, but is there some sort of expectation of how much time people dedicate, I guess?
I mean, it depends on like who else is on your team. If you, for example, have like as in our program, you have another developer on your team. So I think like if you will start dedicating something between 8 and 12 hours, given that you have another team member, you'll be able to make progress from week to week, you know. And of course, it is always the case. So, you know, with side projects, it just because of the nature of a side project, there are other probably more important things that from time to time will come up in your life. For example, you plan to invest as many hours this week into side project, and suddenly you get invited to the interview. right? So you'll probably prioritize the interview. So it's natural, you know. And I think like people who are joining side projects, it's also very important to transparently communicate your availability. And if you're able to do so, then it's totally fine if some weeks you can only dedicate 5 hours or 3 hours, you know. So people just will know what's going on and will probably be happy for you if you're having interviews, you know. So, but I think, you know, just you have just to start, you know. That's why I would not say, hey, just wait until you have like 15 to 20 hours per week. This is exactly the right point to start. The most important thing is just to start, you know, just to get into the flow. And then over time, I think everyone has different situations. Over time, you'll find out like what is your perfect combination of how much time you spend on your interviews versus how many hours you can dedicate to your side project.
Awesome. And then this question here is kind of going back a few questions to William's point about defending your choices, like when you are choosing a project and making those decisions on how you're going to build out the project. How do you build better intentional coding habits?
And hi, Brady. I'm Jacob. I'm the one who asked the question. I tried to edit it, but it was too late. So I was hoping I could just make sort of a real-time edit to the question.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. I meant really like in interviews, you know, how do you sort of set yourself up to be able to articulately, that's ironic, explain your choices. You know, especially coming from a boot camp where you have these like 4-day coding sprints, I so often feel like I'm just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. So yeah, I'm just curious how to sort of build those habits to give yourself a foundation to really be able to explain your decisions in the interview.
I think this is kind of I think it's a pretty good question. One thing that I think at least has helped me a lot in this is consuming a lot of content, I guess, or like reading about why things were made. I think that's a good start. So I don't know, I'm short of examples, so I'm going to go back to databases again. Maybe like one common question during system design is like, why did you choose an SQL database or a NoSQL database, right? And it's like just reading about knowing why NoSQL databases exist, right? Or like the difference or like the advantages helps a lot. And most of the time you learn this by just, you know, I read a lot of stuff on Medium, why people made decisions and stuff. The tougher and like more patient way to do is like just build a lot of side projects, because like you learn a lot of lessons, right? It's like you pick something and it doesn't work and you're like, huh, no, I know why people don't use this for that. So I mean, I think those are two ways top of mind. I guess the fastest way is to practice with people. I mean, if you're short of time and you really need to, you could find someone who is, if you could find someone who's good at it. So I think there are services out there that help, right? Where you can pay to have like system design interviews, and you just learn from like your mistakes or whatever you think went well through there.
Yeah, I think a combination of all that, if you can combine all that, really helps, because the best way to learn is to fuck up, right? So like you make a really bad decision and then you remember never to do that again. You're like, oh, that didn't work because of this specific thing, that like problem that came up in your application, like it doesn't scale or whatever because of a certain reason. So by just coding a lot, you just run into things and you learn by just making the wrong decision, and also consuming a lot of content. I recommend front-end masters if you're doing if you're a front-end developer, or if you can't afford that, there's ways to like get stuff for free too. Like I got my first 2 years of front-end masters for free. Just use the internet and figure out how to like life hacks. Also a lot of content's for free on YouTube, and I highly recommend just joining Twitter, and they call it dev Twitter. You'll learn a lot of stuff. The conversations that happen every day on Twitter. You'll learn a lot of trade-offs because people argue about it all day. They're
True.
like, then you learn the pros and cons because of the arguments that people are making. And if you just spend a lot of time there, I personally spend 2 to 3 hours a day on Twitter, and I think it's a really good investment of my time. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, so consume a lot of content, build a lot of stuff. That's that's what I
Cool.
would say too.
Thank you so much.
Sam, are you able to share your dev list on your Twitter dev list?
Oh yeah, I can grab the link.
All right. Next question is, how important is personality in interviewing? Is being casual and personable an advantage or balance to a standard bootcamp graduate resume portfolio?
I think you just be yourself. That's
Yeah,
that's
true.
Yeah,
my
I think so too. I mean, personality is always important. I mean, it doesn't matter like is it interview or outside of the interview, because
Yeah.
I mean, like if you're trying like to hide something or like to like pretend something and so on and so forth. I mean, even if you might cut it during the interview, then at some point it will probably make you uncomfortable working with the same people because you didn't feel, you know, like yourself during the interview. So I would not recommend anyone like to try to boost yourself somehow sideways from what you are. And I think like to the point is like how to balance your standard bootcamp CV. I think you have to balance it before the interview just to be selected for this interview, because I think once you got selected to the interview, it's like it's not about balancing your CV anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it's like really showing what you can, like showing your personality and so on. But in order to stand out, this is why we're here today, is like do some practical work, you know.
Yep, I agree. And I know when I had graduated from boot camp, and one of the girls in one of the cohorts a little bit before me was really leaning into that and being her genuine self when she was interviewing and when she was writing like cover letters or little blurbs on LinkedIn. Kind of, I must not have been quick apply because she had a section to write something about herself, and she would always try to incorporate something about like stuff that she did on like the weekends, and like she liked playing video games, and it was not the current situation, but it worked out really well for her in the end. So I tried to also, like when I was interviewing, just try to connect with the people that I was interviewing, because I felt like that was going to give me a better feel of who my coworkers would be, but then also they could see like I was a person that they could talk to between like getting some work done.
Yeah, I also recommend everyone. So I'm coaching also in another program, aspiring product managers. But once again, you're all kind of in the same boat when you're trying to find a job. So I'm also recommending everyone kind of like to try to build your personal brand, also on social media, on LinkedIn. Coming to the point what Will made earlier in terms of just putting yourself out there. So it is totally needed. So you have to show as much of your personality, as much of your interests and passions and like side projects and hobbies and so on and so forth. At some point, somebody will get your content noticed and maybe will put you on a short list, even though maybe not immediately.
We're at 1:30 now. How are you doing on time, Polina and Will?
How does it usually work? I'll gonna
It
just stick
depends on
around the whole Saturday.
it depends on the guest. Sometimes a lot of times we don't get through all the questions. I mean, because some people have to go and do other stuff. So just wanted to check with you.
Yeah, it depends on Will. I mean, I can do maybe another 10 minutes. Otherwise,
Okay.
mama duties are calling.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah, 10 minutes sounds good.
yeah.
Okay. Are you working at your dream company, or what is the dream company? What's the draw to that company that draws to you? draws you to it?
Okay. So anytime I hear this question, I'd like this. I think there's a video on the internet where it's like, "Oh, honey, I don't dream of labor." Right? That's what comes to mind anytime I hear this question. I, I mean, I don't know. I think one hard lesson I've learned in my career is like, there's no dream company. I mean, if there's anything close to that, probably a dream team, because like I've been in the same company with people where like I know the next team is having a great time and like I'm having a really bad time because like of my management of some teammates. Um, what was the question again? I don't know. I just heard dream company and I was like, oh no, not a dream company. but but
Oh, here, I already archived it. It was, oh, where did it go?
I think I saw it.
Oh, it's the second one down. Are you working at your dream company, or what is the dream company, like in your opinion? What's the
So I mean,
draw?
so for me, a big part is, I guess, do I think I'm doing like meaningful work, or I mean, I don't know, it's silly, but it just comes down to some form of happiness, right? For me, I really love utilizing my bootstrapping skills. So if I'm gonna be able to do a lot of exploration, that makes me happy, right? For me currently, I think my current team right now, I really love it because it's like I'm in the React org, right? But I'm not working on open source React. It's like kind of building the components for like the new Facebook.com, right? So it's like a good mixture of product work and infrastructure work, and that's why I thrive, right? And I get to do a lot of exploring. So for me, like right now at this moment, this is like really great for me, right? I don't know, sometime it might change, and I think I'm getting there. Like I'm getting to a point where I'm like, I've done a lot of product work. I kind of want to do more infra work. So I mean, I know, I guess I'd say your dream company evolves as you evolve. But then one advice I'll give engineer developers, like don't make this like the brand of a company kind of like woo you. Always focus on the team because you can have a really bad experience at a great company.
That's great advice. Yeah. And potentially the opposite.
True.
Yeah. Did anyone else have?
I'm definitely working my dream company. So I created myself. So that's why it's definitely, I consider myself now on the happy path. And it's definitely, because I had this previous experience working in a startup. And once again, I had positive experience and bad experience in the same company, just like Will said. Although, again, I created myself with other team members, still, there are always kind of like positive and negative sides. I think I have learned a lot from that experience and trying to making this new experience with SidePrjct more on the positive side. So, but once again, I think when you're thinking about dream company, I'm also like not buying into a dream company. You have to think just like about different aspects. Like, is it people? Is it a specific role that you'll be thriving in? And is it the product maybe that makes you passionate to work on? So I think there's just like, there's nothing like dream company. There are like just different components that will make you happy in the end of the day and will make you wake up and like be excited about working on a specific problem and so on and so forth. So that's why, yeah, just basically echoing what just Will said. So there are different people, there are different personalities, and for some, even if you have done the bootcamp, for some people will thrive in one roles, some other people will thrive in different roles, even with the same kind of like knowledge that they're bringing into the company. But you have to be open-minded also to kind of like to become more self-aware in terms of like what exactly that you want, not somebody else, but like what exactly that you want. And over time, you will discover it.
Brady, you want to do like one more question?
Sure.
And then we can just chat.
Yeah. And this is a great one because it's specific to SidePrjct. How are the developers selected for the accelerator? You had mentioned earlier that there are certain fundamentals you're looking for.
Yeah. So once again, so I'm open to people who are self-taught or who are graduates from the bootcamps or recent graduates from kind of like universities and so on who are looking for more practical experience. I think it depends on what you, again, how do you want to contribute to the side project. So if you are applying as a front-end developer, so then I would expect that you have some basic knowledge, or hopefully have a couple of projects. Could be very minimal, could be to-do apps and all this stuff, but like that, you know, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, maybe React, you know, so that you can actually contribute as a front-end engineer. If you want to contribute as a back-end engineer, then I would expect that you know some back-end technologies like, I don't know, Node or Python. It depends. So we don't have specific stack that we're saying that all engineers have to be kind of like applying during the bootcamp, not during the bootcamp, during the side project accelerator. But it should be reasonable to you that you'll be applying the skills actually to a real project, and it should be helpful for the team. So I would not say that, hey, maybe you know already front-end languages and you could do front-end, but you're thriving to learn more of a back-end, but you have never done it before. Given that the program is very short, I would probably say it might be not the best idea to apply as a back-end engineer and say, hey, I just want to build backends, because you'll probably have to have like a little bit more like learning upfront, a little bit of testing upfront, so you can actually deliver some progress for the project during the program. So I think this is kind of like the only things that we are kind of like trying to identify prior to the program. And the second criteria is more of like your willingness to learn and your ability to contribute to the projects. So there are two ways, right? Like if you're joining projects just in the side project community, you can decide how much time you want to spend and you negotiate it with the team. With the side project accelerator, it's a little bit more structured. So teams have like every second week, they have project progress updates to the whole cohort. They're getting feedback, they're kind of learning and making sure that they're making progress. For the accelerator, I would expect somebody like to have on average 10 hours per week. So they want to join.
Shall we stop recording and we can do some intros?
Yep, and thanks to Polina and Will for joining us today.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too. I think it was really fun. So I was also a little anxious, like going to the room only with engineers, but thank you, Will, for coming here to support me too, and Braidy and Sam being such awesome hosts. So it was really cool.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
So have fun, connect with us on LinkedIn, and happy to support you as much as we can also in the future. So thank you. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you. You too.